You already know how to spot someone trying to look rich. You've never once been trained to notice the second you're the one who's impressed. Think about the last time someone mentioned a number tad. A trip, a renovation, a raise pretties, and something in you quietly shifted. No purchase happened. But somewhere beneath conscious thought, the invisible line your brain uses to judge and whether your life is fine, behind, or ahead just moved without a vote, without a receipt, without your permission. That's the reflex underneath every quiet wealth habit you've ever tried to build freeing. The one nobody names. Because it isn't about spending less. It's about becoming harder to move. Skip this part, and every budget, every rule, every good intention eventually gets quietly overridden by the same unexamined flinch. Most people spend their energy watching other people's spending for warning signs. That's the wrong alarm. The real one has been going off inside you the whole time, and it's been compounding somewhere you've never checked. You've probably been told to watch for the obvious signals. The friend who upgrades their car every 2 years. The coworker who narrates every vacation before it's finished. The instinct is to treat their choices as the risk-fed, as if their spending is the thing that could destabilize yours. It isn't. Their choice is just information. What actually moves the needle happens on your side of the screen, in the quarter second after you hear the number. Picture a group chat. Someone drops a photo, mentions a figure almost as an aside. A kitchen redo, a weekend flight, a new watch. You don't say anything. You might not even consciously register a reaction. But underneath the silence, something registers you. A small internal flick of comparison. A tiny recalibration of what counts as ordinary. Nobody sees it happen. You barely feel it happen. And that's exactly the problem, You've spent years learning to evaluate other people's purchases and never once been asked to evaluate your own response to them. You've spent years learning to evaluate other people's purchases and never once been asked to evaluate your own response to them. That reaction has a cost, and it's been compounding somewhere you've never checked. That cost isn't a purchase. That's the part almost everyone misses. What actually happens in that quarter second isn't a spending decision, it's a redefinition. Somewhere just beneath conscious thought, your internal sense of enough nudges upward or sideways to accommodate what you just witnessed. But your baseline, the invisible number your brain uses to judge whether your own life currently qualifies as fine, behind, or ahead, just moved without a vote. Without a vote. The purchase, if it ever comes, is downstream. The real event already happened, and it happened for free. Here's what makes this dangerous. It doesn't require you to want anything. You can have zero interest in kitchens or watches and the recalibration still fires, because it isn't tracking desire, it's tracking normalcy. Every unguarded exposure to someone else's performance quietly edits your internal file on what a stable, respectable, adequate life is supposed to contain. And because no money changes hands in the moment, there's no receipt, no line item, nothing to review later. The edit just stays. Here's the split. Some people feel that pull and still don't move. What separates them isn't more discipline, It's a different starting reflex, and next we look at exactly what that reflex drains. What it drains isn't your bank balance directly, Tal. Not at first. It drains something quieter and harder to audit. Your ability to know, on your own terms, what enough actually means to you. Picture someone who does everything technically right. They budget, they track, they avoid the obvious traps. And they still can't shake the low hum of not quite there, because the target they're measuring against isn't fixed hair. It's been drifting for years, one unnoticed flinch at a time, borrowed from whoever happened to be impressive that week. This is the real tax, and it isn't denominated in dollars. It's identity instability disguised as financial anxiety. You can do the spreadsheet correctly and still feel behind, because the spreadsheet was never the problem. The problem is that enough was never actually yours to begin with. It was assembled, piece by piece, out of other people's highlight reels. And a borrowed finish line moves every time someone crosses it near you. Which raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if some people simply stopped paying this tax? Not through more willpower, not through a stricter budget back, through something that made the recalibration itself stop firing. What would that person even look like from the outside? Probably unremarkable. Probably someone you've already stood next to without noticing anything unusual at all. Probably someone you've already stood next to without noticing anything unusual at all. There's a version of a person who stopped paying this tax years ago, and you've probably already met one without noticing. We'll come back to exactly what gave them away. Here's what gave them away, once you knew to look. It wasn't their car. It wasn't their clothes. It wasn't a lecture about materialism, or a pointed comment about other people's spending tie. That's not immunity, that's just resistance, and resistance still costs something. Imagine someone standing in that same group chat, hearing the same number, watching the same photo land Todd, and nothing moves. Not suppressed. Not politely tolerated. Nothing to suppress in the first place. They're not fighting the reflex. The reflex simply never fires. That distinction matters more than it sounds like it should. Someone gritting their teeth through a wave of envy is still spending energy on it. The reflex fired. They just didn't act on it. And that restraint is exhausting in a way that eventually cracks. Genuine status immunity looks almost boring by comparison, because there's nothing happening to manage. Which leaves an obvious question. Is that just temperament by something you either have or don't miss? Or is it something you can actually build? Or is it something you can actually build? That difference, suppressing the reflex versus never having it fire comes down to one specific, learnable move. And that's what we build next. The move happens in that same quarter second you already know about, Katal. The one from the group chat. The one where something in you quietly shifted before you'd even decided to feel anything. That flicker is the entire opportunity. Right now, it runs uninterrupted. You notice, you compare, your baseline adjusts, and you never once get a say in it. This is impressive, is an observation. This is what I should have, is a conclusion. The entire discipline is prying them apart every single time before the second sentence gets to write itself into your baseline uninvited. This isn't a mindset shift you install once and keep. It's closer to training a muscle, DOV, the same quarter second. Some reps you'll catch it late, some you'll miss completely. That's not failure, that's the actual shape of the practice. And once your baseline stops moving every time someone nearby performs theirs, something opens up that no amount of extra income ever quite delivers on its own. Your spending starts reflecting decisions you actually made. instead of edits you never approved. That's the real definition worth using here. Not how much you've accumulated, but how rarely you're still being moved. Until you catch that flicker on purpose, every other money rule you follow is just managing symptoms of a reflex you never actually addressed.